Welcome back to the channel. If you've forgotten over the last 2 years, this is Dylan and I'm Lakin Fraser. This is Fraser number 3, and this is our new tent.
For a while, we've been on the search for our perfect tent, and given that our family dynamics are changing, we were looking for a ground tent that has very few compromises and would be very comfortable for a growing family. And so we think that this tent right here might just strike up the best balance for the type of traveling and camping that we do. This is the Springbar Classic Jack 100. For those of you who aren't familiar, Springbar has been around since the 1960s. They're based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. And full disclosure, I did actually reach out to them and ask them if they'd be willing to partner with us, allow us to do a review on their tent in exchange for the product. So full disclosure, they did send us the product free of charge. They are allowing us to critique it and say what we'd like about it. However, there's really not a lot of criticisms here. The TLDR of this review is that sometimes when you're buying a product, it's best to buy once, cry once, and this tent is definitely that. As a brief overview, the Classic Jack 100 is a canvas tension style tent. All right, what tent review would be complete without having a tent tour? So let's take a quick tour. It's a tent. It's not going to take a long time, but as you can see here, of course, we do have a nice awning. It is nice and sizable. When we were camping in Yellowstone underneath this while it was raining, it was super nice. We were able to enjoy a nice dinner underneath the awning. It was great. So yeah, awning is nice. Couple tie-out points for it. Additionally, the poles are adjustable, so you can adjust the height. So if you want to change the height of the awning, you can very easily do that. One thing that's new for this year on this model of tent is that there's a special coating on the poles to make them corrosion resistant. So that's a nice touch. Nice big door. This is one thing that we didn't like about the Gazelle tent, is that the door is super hard to get in and out of. This is not a problem at all. The door is huge, and it's very easy to step inside. Of course, you can open it side to side here too. So once again, plenty of space. So here you can see we got a fairly wide angle lens. It's not an ultra wide angle lens, so hopefully it gives you some sort of sense of the space of this being a 10 by 10 foot tent. You can see, of course, really big windows on both sides. The back has just a massive window. Look at how awesome this window is. So much airflow can come in. When you combine the really nice duck cotton canvas fabric that breathes so well with these big windows, you'll find that this tent is just incredibly well ventilated. We had no condensation at all in this tent, even in Yellowstone when it was really damp and humid. No condensation issues whatsoever. There's a big window over here as well. And the tent has quite a few little tie-out points. So Springbar has some accessories that you can basically add, like some straps that go from one side to the other. So if you have like a wet towel or some clothes or something you want to hang, you can do that. One other thing is that down here, I think they said this was a new feature for this year. There's actually a little zippered port that you can run a power cable in and out. So if you camp at a campground that has like an electrical hookup, you can run it through the tent that way. Or maybe you've got like a solar panel and a power station. Well, then you can run your cables that way as well. So it's really nice. It's kind of everything you need, nothing you don't. But everything that is here is super nice and really contributes to just a really comfortable camping experience. And that's going to lead us into sort of our pros and cons for this tent. What's pro number one?
It's huge.
Yeah, it's a very big tent. And of course, Springbar does offer multiple size options. This being the Classic Jack 100, it is 10 by 10, so it's 100 square feet. And I believe the ceiling height is roughly 6.5 feet. It's huge. If you're ever going to have a ground tent that is almost a cabin, if you will, this is that tent. Really spacious, and we're looking forward to that because I think in the near future we're going to have a pack and play in this thing. All right, what's pro number two?
It's pretty.
Yeah, it does look good. They got a couple different color options. Springbar has two different lineups of tents. They have their import series, which the Classic Jack series is part of that. So this is made overseas. They do have a line of tents that are made actually in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is really cool. So if you're looking for a US-made tent, you can still get one from them, which is really cool. And they've got multiple different color options in both lineups. This one is the OD green. We like it. It's really nice. Pro number 3 is the canvas material that this tent is made out of. 90% of tents out there are made of basically either polyester or nylon. And these are synthetic materials. They have the benefit of being really lightweight, I guess being fairly inexpensive at times, but what they lack is any sort of breathability. So this is made out of duck cotton canvas, and that being a completely natural fiber means that this tent is really nice. It is both a little bit warmer, we've noticed, in cooler weather. We camped with this in Yellowstone a couple weeks ago in some pretty cold weather and found that it was, I would say it was definitely noticeably warmer inside than we would have experienced with a nylon tent. Additionally, duck cotton canvas breathes really well in really warm temperatures as well. I have had this tent set up in direct sun in our backyard during the middle of the day when it's like 90 degrees, and when I step inside it, it actually is pretty comfortable. If you have just a touch of shade, you can basically stay in this tent, I've found, just about any time of the day during the summer. We're yet to have it in like really harsh conditions, like, you know, triple digits, like in the desert or something like that. But I think if you're out here and you have even just a measure of shade and decently cool weather, it's gonna be really comfortable to just sit inside it. Additionally, duck cotton canvas, it's really water resistant, we've found. We also got just absolutely poured on in Yellowstone for I'd say, what was it, about 12 hours?
Whole night.
An entire night. And despite the fact that the ceiling of the tent actually has a seam directly down the middle, no water at all leaked inside, which is really impressive because usually tents should not have a seam right down the middle of the fly, essentially. This tent doesn't have that problem. So when those cotton fibers expand when they get wet, I don't know what else to say. It keeps water out. What's pro number 4?
It's actually way faster to set up than we thought.
Yes, yeah. So it does come in 2 different bags. I guess 3 if you count the bags that the stakes are in. And basically you have the tent body, and you basically just stake it down, and you slide a couple poles, and you lift it with 2 larger poles, and if you want to, you can stake out the awning here. Springbar does recommend using all the stakes, and they do recommend using a ground sheet with the tent, but honestly, in our experience, we've gotten away with not doing those steps precisely every time, and it still pitches really well every single time we've used it. Despite the fact it's really big, it does pitch really easily. That tension design by having the 2 spring bars, if you will, on both sides of the tent, it works really easily. It's super intuitive to set up. I recommend, if you're interested and you want to know more about the setup process, go watch the video that Springbar has made on the process. It's super easy. I would say that by comparison, it probably takes, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 minutes to set up and stake down the gazelle tent. This, now that I've done it a couple times, this probably takes maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. I ought to time it at some point, but it's really not that bad. And tearing it down is a very similar story. You just do the process in reverse. Springbar is really kind, and they put a diagram inside the bag. They printed a diagram as to how to fold the tent to get it back in the bag easily. And the bag is oversized, and the bag is a roll-in design. So basically, you pack up the tent and you roll it into the bag. And honestly, putting this tent back in the bag is the easiest of any tent I've ever used. And the poles just collapse, and you put them in a bag, and you're ready to go. So yeah, despite the fact it looks like a Taj Mahal of tents, it really is super easy to tear down and set up. I'd say it takes a touch more effort than like the Gazelle tent overall, but it doesn't have any of the other drawbacks that the Gazelle tent has. All right, no product is perfect. And a couple of the small little cons, I'd say, of having this tent have absolutely nothing to do with the quality of it. Take it from me, I've spent the last 2 years hand building outdoor products. I've spent a lot of time with a sewing machine putting together outdoor products, and I'm very critical of things like sewing construction when it comes to this type of thing. And this tent is absolutely flawless. Honestly, it's probably the most beautifully constructed tent I've ever seen in my life. I think the design of it is excellent. So from a quality perspective, I have no nitpicks. What are some of the cons, though? There's a couple of them. but they're very minor.
It does still take up a good bit of space when it's packed down.
Yeah, I would say that if you're looking for the most minimal space required for a tent, like in the back of your vehicle, this thing is a little bit larger. Thankfully, the one thing I really appreciate about it is that it doesn't pack down as long as most instant tents do. So like instant tents that have the hubs like our Gazelle tent, I think the Gazelle tent, it's like over 50 inches long. And that doesn't fit horizontally in the back of your vehicle, unless you have a Sequoia. It fits horizontally in the Sequoia. Doesn't fit horizontally in our GX, however. This tent will do that. The poles are the longest bit, but they do go in the back. However, the body of the tent is pretty large. There's no other way to put it. It's pretty large. I think, especially if you've got like if your vehicle of choice is like a truck with a bed, this thing would be perfect to toss in the back of it. If you've got an SUV like ours, you might have to arrange things a little bit more carefully than you would. But yeah, one little tiny con, it is a large tent. What's con number 2?
Con number 2 is the flip side of a pro, because while we listed all of the wonderful aspects of the fabric, the duck cotton canvas does have to be stored dry. So if you camped a whole night in the rain like we did, you're gonna have to get your tent dried out either at camp or immediately when you get home.
Because it's a natural fiber, it's a little bit more susceptible to getting mold. All tents should be dried before storing, but if you have a nylon or polyester tent, you have, from personal experience, I know you have several days before you have some serious problems. You can store those things in a bag wet for, honestly, quite a long time before you have issues. The people over at Springbar told me that they really, these tents really need to be dried within about 24 hours. So if you're gonna spend a lot of time in wet environments, or maybe if you live like in an apartment complex where it's not easy to take your tent out at home and dry it, this might not be the right choice for you. Take your tent home at the end of the trip and dry it out, not a big deal. I found that it does dry out quickly, so not a big deal, but it is something to keep in mind.
It's also really nice if you're like us and your only barrier to drying your tent out is just that you're lazy. It just keeps you a little bit more honest.
All right, there's one final con, and this kind of harkens back to what I kind of hinted at the beginning of the video, and that is that this tent is a little bit on the expensive side. Some people will look at the price of this tent and think that it's way too much. However, price is a relative term. So if you look at like rooftop tents, this thing is way cheaper still. That was one thing we talked about when we reviewed the Gazelle tent. That thing is a bargain compared to a rooftop tent. This is too. So yeah, it's a little bit on the pricey side of things, but if you're looking to buy once, cry once, maybe you're looking for a tent to own for like 20, 30 years, this is definitely the tent for you. The contact I spoke with at Springbar told me that it's very frequent for them to hear stories about Springbar tents becoming like family heirlooms. They get kind of passed along. They've been around since the 60s, and yeah, they're so high quality that they just last forever if they're taken care of. $850, yeah, it's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow, but for what you're getting, it's a really excellent value for money in my opinion. So that sort of wraps it up. That's our initial experience. We're gonna be camping with this thing a lot more in the future, especially when we do have our baby. We're really looking forward to having the extra space and comfort that this tent has. Should make camping with a baby quite a bit easier. But even that aside, man, it's just such a nice high quality tent. It's such a pleasure to use. That we're really looking forward to the adventures we're going to take it on in the future, and we hope to share that with you as well. So anyway, thanks for watching. Go check out Springbar. We'll have a link for their website in the description. Once again, awesome company, been around for a long time. We recommend that you check them out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.